Welcome back, everyone, to CBS 46's special election coverage here. Let's get you the very latest numbers on some key races out there.
Yeah, the final numbers are coming in, not quite finalized, but let's take a look at that governor's race that has already been called. Governor Nathan Deal wins another 4 years in office with 55% of the vote to Jason Carter's 42%. You can see almost all the precincts reporting right now at 94%.
And Stephanie, this race has been called as well, the race for U.S. Senate. Of course, we told you just a short time ago the Republicans take control of the Senate. They were hoping they would win this seat, and they did. David Purdue has 56% of the vote to Michelle Nunn's 42%, 94% of the precincts reporting, so almost the very final numbers.
And ladies, a very, very good night for state Republicans and conservatives here in Georgia, but we want to get back and continue with our live team coverage with all of our reporters who were scattered out around the metro area. So let's go to Michelle Nunn's camp first, and here's CBS 46's Mike Paluska.
Scott, Michelle Nunn said tonight that this is not the way she thought the night would end, and this is not the way she wanted the night to end. Just before 11 o'clock, she conceded defeat. She called David Purdue and congratulated him on an election that was hard fought. She said that she did everything she could to try to get every single voter that wanted to vote for her to the polls. This morning, she was out in full force trying to get people to the polls, but in the end, it did not work out in her favor. She had been trailing all night long. She had never come out to really rally her support base here and downtown Atlanta, but she did have some things to say about what she did over the past several months when she conceded a short time ago.
Well, I am very proud to have stood side by side in this campaign with thousands of Georgians who've worked so hard. Your hands, I know some of y'all's hands may be blistered from putting in all those yard signs. And your voices may be hoarse from doing all that shouting and talking and telling people how important this race is. And I know that there's a lot of tired feet tonight because y'all have been walking a lot of neighborhoods. And you could not have worked harder.
So even to the very end, a lot of cheers in support of Michelle Nunn. She said that her main thing tonight was to try to change Georgia, to try to get Georgia back working, to try to get employment rates higher, to raise the minimum wage. All of those things, she said, were important, and she said that when people vote, they can change the world. Very optimistic speech tonight, even though she lost to David Purdue. Back to you guys.
Mike, thanks very much. So now let's check in with that victorious camp at David Purdue's headquarters. And once again, here's CBS 46's Adam Murphy.
Well, David Purdue is the next senator from the state of Georgia in the United States Senate, and a victorious crowd here. They're all super excited. A short while ago, we actually heard from David Purdue during his victory speech. One of the things he said was he's going to roll up his sleeves and get to work just like he's done all his life. He had some other great comments to tell all of the supporters that were here, and this is what he had to say at the podium.
Georgians made it loud and clear tonight that we want to stop the failed policies of this administration and Harry Reid. Georgians want a safer America. They want a stronger America. They want a more secure America. Whether it's a stronger foreign policy, dealing with threats like ISIS and Ebola, fixing the VA, securing our border, and really doing something finally about this debt for our kids and grandkids.
And David Purdue has vowed to change what's broken in Washington. We're live here in Buckhead at the David Purdue campaign headquarters. Adam Murphy, CBS 46 News.
And right now, let's go to another victorious camp tonight, Nathan Deal's camp. And Christopher King has been there all evening long. Christopher, good evening again.
Good evening again, Scott. Governor Deal gave his victory speech. He thanked his supporters. He thanked his family. It was a tough race. The polls leading up to tonight had showed a very tight campaign, but in the end, it wasn't even close. Governor Deal spoke about half an hour ago. Here's what he had to say.
I promise you tonight, as I promised you during the election, we will continue to make Georgia the best place in the country for every possible thing you can imagine: jobs, environment, family life, best place to live. We have it all going for us, and we're going to keep it moving in that direction.
Governor Nathan Deal wins by a comfortable margin. He gets 4 more years, and he'll get to keep his job. We are live at Deal's election night headquarters. Christopher King, CBS 46 News.
And once again, we'll check in with Jeff Cherico. He has been with Jason Carter and his supporters all night tonight. Jeff?
Hey, Scott, yeah, somber night here. They did not pull out the win that they were predicting. A few minutes ago, Jason Carter took to the stage. He said that he had called Governor Deal tonight and promised to do anything that Governor Deal needed him to do to make Georgia what he called the powerhouse that it can be. Although it was not a win tonight, Jason Carter says that this campaign put the issue of education funding on the front burner, and that is a win for the state of Georgia and its students. Here's a little bit more of what Jason had to say in his concession speech just moments ago.
I'd like to thank Governor Deal and Dr. Hunt for going through this tough campaign with me. And while this wasn't the result, of course, that we had hoped for, we still have a giant amount to be proud of. This campaign put education back at the very top priority list for our state.
And after his concession speech, Senator Carter was joined by his very proud grandfather, the former President Jimmy Carter, and the former First Lady, Rosalind Carter. He was also joined by his wife and children, brothers-in-law and sister, the whole family here as a family affair. I tried to ask Senator Carter what's next for him and whether there was any chance of another run in 4 years. But his spokespeople did not let me ask that question. We will try to get that as soon as we can. We are live here at the campaign election night headquarters. Jeff Cherico, CBS46.
All right, Jeff, an A for effort out there, at least, in trying to get that question answered. Speaking of answering some questions, I've got a whole studio full of analysts here, some of the best folks in the state to break down these races. We'll do that coming up right after a quick commercial break here on CBS46. Welcome back, everyone. As promised, I've got a studio full of the best political analysts in our state. So let's begin and talk about this U.S. Senate race. And Stephen Anthony, I will begin with you. You've been following Georgia politics for a long, long time. A lot of people were talking about Georgia going purple, runoffs tonight. Georgia voters are having none of that. A resounding victory for conservatives tonight in our state.
It's been fairly consistent the last 10 years. Few races here and there, but the percentages are about the same as they've been the last decade, and all favoring the Republicans. The Democrats have to be disappointed. I don't know who had a worse week this week, the Georgia Democrats or the Georgia Bulldogs.
And Lakita, about the polling that we've talked about as the night has gone on, it was way off. I mean, there were some polls that showed Michelle Nunn had a lead.
Yes, it was definitely off, and a lot of people are going to be looking at what the Democrats did not do right. And one thing that Donna Brazile, was saying earlier is that this last week effort to kind of mobilize the black voters is not going to be helpful as far as getting out young voters and minority voters. They need to do more in advance instead of this last push effort at the 1 week before the elections.
And Kevin Scott, all the hype again about Georgia maybe becoming kind of that purple state, maybe a toss-up state. It's still a deep red state tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Make no mistake, this was a referendum on President Obama's policies, and Georgians spoke loud and clear, and they've put Republicans back in control here.
All right, walk with me here, Joe, if you would. Joe's my man behind our mobile camera here. I want to get to my other panel, and we need to talk about the victory tonight for 72-year-old Nathan Deal. This is his last campaign. Folks, I did a little history. The last time Nathan Deal lost an election, it was with the JCs back in the 70s when he was running for something within that organization. How was he able to pull off such a resounding victory, Ken?
Well, I think he was able to do it, number one, with his fundraising, number two, with his consistent messaging. I mean, he found a message, he focused on it. There were negative messages throughout the campaign, but the reason why campaigns use negative ads is because simply they work.
That's exactly right. People hate them, but they work, don't they?
Yeah.
Sarah, your insights from tonight.
Well, I think that, for an incumbent, it's their race to lose. So the incumbent has better name recognition. People know more about him. They know about his record. They know a lot less about the challenger, especially Carter, because he has less experience. So I think it really was Deal's race to lose, and he won. So.
Andy?
I think we've talked a lot about the efforts that Democrats made to turn out voters, and we haven't looked at the numbers yet, and we won't be able to for probably a couple of weeks. But it doesn't appear they were successful. We might also look on the flip side and see that Republicans were very successful. It might not be so much a failure by Democrats to turn out their voters that explains the gap between the polls and the actual outcome, but the success of the Republican Party in the state.
Are you surprised that it looks as though there is a Republican wave happening tonight? I mean, Tom Tillis just got North Carolina over Kay Hagan. What do you think?
I think there's a way, but I think most of us who look at national politics expect this. The 6th year of any presidency is always the worst. There's only been 2 elections in American history where the incumbent president's party hasn't lost votes, or lost seats, I'm sorry. And this is just a further extension of that. It seems more extreme than we thought it would be, but it certainly fits the general pattern.
Sarah, you study ethnicity and politics. You study race and gender. What do you want to glean from this once you're able to get some numbers in terms of the voters and demographic breakdown and things like that?
Well, I mean, I think Andy's right. I think a big part of this is really that the president brings in people on his coattails when he runs, right? So he ran 6 years ago, brought in a lot of people into office with him. So I mean, it's really that explains one of the reasons why we see so much seat loss in midterm elections. You know?
Okay. Ken, a closing thought here tonight?
I mean, a closing thought would be twofold. One, we really don't know how to explain the discrepancy between what happened on Election Day and what all the polls said. Because all of the polls, they didn't agree, but they all had the race much tighter than it turned out to be on Election Day. So I think some deconstruction really needs to happen when we look at who actually voted, where the turnout was higher than we expected it to be, where the turnout was lower than expected to be, to really understand what happened in the election, at least when it comes to Georgia.
Okay. We've got plenty more to talk about here. Coming up, we've got a final look at some of the numbers from some other key races, including a look at the referendum when it comes to MARTA going to Clayton County. We'll get to those numbers right after a quick break.